UAP are airborne objects that, when encountered, cannot be immediately identified. With regard to the importance of transparency, the Department is fully committed to the principle of openness and accountability to the American people.
We're going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Oh my gosh, dude.
U.S. Navy personnel recorded what appears to be triangles, some flashing. The video was taken through night vision goggles with a single lens reflex camera.
Well, I would say, it's a pretty high-profile incident. I don't claim to be an expert. You're the guys investigating it. I mean, who else is doing it?
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to UFO We Want to Know. This is April 6, 2024, so we're moving right along. Before I begin the show, as I always do, this is dedicated to those who have been ridiculed, made fun of, and dragged to the media for the last 76 plus years. I have a really good show for you, so I want to get started with it because I got a lot of information, so we can put the first photo up. And ladies and gentlemen, in modern day, we had presidents such as Franklin D. Roosevelt, Harry S. Truman, Dwight D. Eisenhower, Jimmy Carter, and Ronald Reagan. These are just modern day presidents that had something to do with UFOs or ufology. Whether they had talked about it or even had documentation that shows that they had a sighting. However, I want to talk about the first president we ever had. But the next photo. During the time of these modern day presidents, we had a very, very scary time. The media didn't do a very good job. And a lot of people never knew we had flying saucers over the Capitol, as you can see here from this old photo here. But nevertheless, it did happen. Next photo. Now, the Air Force, and I'm not going to bash the Air Force officers, spokespersons, they had to say and do what they were told. I know, being in the military myself, when I was told to do something, you just did it. It's an autocratic type system. But they came out with all types of excuses. Next photo. And they had a lot of things to blame it on, such as weather. Whatever their excuses were, they were told to say what they said. And it didn't make for good communications with the American people at the time. Next photo. But this is the gentleman we really want to talk about. And he's my favorite president, not only because he was the first president, but he was also a general. Served in the military, the Army. And what we're going to be talking about in particular is the campaign here, and at the time, this was 1777 to 1778, and for me, it's a nice feeling because at that time, we're talking about Valley Forge. He served in 1777. I served in the Army starting in 1977, so we're talking a 200-year difference here, so that's a little nostalgia for me. George Washington essentially went through a tremendous ordeal here at Valley Forge. He was in control of the United States Army at the time. We called it the Continental Army. Next photo. And as he was going through, he would inspect his troops. Not liking what he was seeing, of course, was a very traumatic experience for him, I'm sure. Next photo. George Washington was appointed commander of the Continental Army in 1775. Despite having little experience in commanding large military forces, his leadership and fortitude held the American military together long enough to secure a victory at Yorktown and independence for his new nation in 1781. Next photo. Now, before he commanded the Continental Army, he commanded no more than 2,000 troops. And these were militias, essentially, and sometimes 100 regulars and 300 militia. And that's all he would command. But at Valley Forge, he was in charge of a great deal more men. 12,000 in the month of December and 20,000 in late spring. That just goes to show you the difference of his command structure there. Next photo. As you can see from these paintings here, he had a lot on his mind. So what did soldiers need at Valley Forge? Well, soldiers were supposed to receive daily amounts of beef, pork, or fish, flour or bread, cornmeal or rice, and rum or whiskey. Soldiers recorded eating not only their pet dogs, but also their own leather shoes to sustain themselves. Next photo. Now, in this particular photo, he's conferring with one of his officers, and you know, it's got to be a terrible thing to know that you don't have supplies, and you have to deal with what you're dealing with, primarily because you are a new nation, a new army. You have very little. Next photo. It must have been terrifying looking at his ragtag army. But Washington always put on a strong facade, knowing he was no better off than his troops. Next photo. As you can see, George Washington had a lot on his mind. And the paintings don't do him any justice. I can imagine the frown on his face when he was looking at all of the men that were freezing. In some cases, some of the men didn't even have shoes. Of course, I said earlier that they ate their leather soles, but in a lot of cases they had frostbite. They lost a limb, and it was just a terrible, terrible situation for the Continental Army in 1777 to 1778. And of course, again, we're talking about not a battle, but an encampment at Valley Forge. Now remember, Valley Forge was not a battle, it was an encampment, waiting out the winter so they could regroup. And it was a time of extreme cold. Temperatures varied, but it was so cold that a lot of his men died in their sleep. They froze to death. There is several accounts of just exactly how many men died, but there's never an accurate account. Remember, these were the early days, and keeping track of these poor guys, I can imagine they didn't have a lot to write about because everybody was just trying to stay alive. I can imagine the situation. I was stationed overseas in weather that was below zero, and I was wearing modern day equipment, and I was still freezing. So I can imagine what they went through without the luxury of having leather boots and wool clothing and overcoats. They just didn't have that material back then. The distribution system just was not in existence at that time. And soldiers went without eating for several days. And that in itself is something that I think we have to really take into account, the suffering they did. And you know, the first segment here, I'm trying to give you an idea of what the George Washington and the troops he had were going through at Valley Forge. And you might say, well, what's that got to do with ufology? It has a lot to do with ufology because of what happened to George Washington. Now, in the next segment, we're going to get into that. And there's some controversy about it. George Washington, and I'll repeat myself a couple of times, but George Washington never wrote his memoirs. He kept a diary. And here's the so important part of this whole thing. His diary was in his own handwriting. And we know it was in his handwriting because we have a lot of letters signed by George Washington. Whether or not you want to believe some of the things written in his diaries, it's up to you. You were given a brain to think, to make your own decisions, and I'm going to let you do that. But here's the really, really important part. You never hear about George Washington and his visions. Okay? There's a great deal of information for you to see on the internet. It talks about his visions. But if you look, the bulk of them, I'd say 95% of it, they talk about just his vision and what he saw. And what I'm going to be showing you in the next session is my thinking, the vision, was it angelic or was it alien encounters? So I want to try and give you my perspective on it as a ufologist versus what they put out on the internet. And I got both sides, I think, pretty balanced. But as a ufologist, I'm going to be assuming that my side is the correct side. And there is a lot of material out there that proves the fact that if it was angelic, some of the stuff you hear is things that you hear when you're growing up in a religious family. A glowing person, maybe a halo, but in a lot of cases, you're going to be hearing things that people who have been abducted talk about, very similar. And we're talking about 1777, 78. 1777, 78. We're not talking about 1940s, 50s, and 60s, when we had a lot of abductions. So we'll see what you think. And if I'm wrong, please write me at UFO@gmail.com, because I like to get the input on people and what they think. So we'll do that when we come back. So please stay with us for that exciting segment. Hold on.
Hi, I'm Joseph, the host and creator of UFO We Want to Know. Tune in every Saturday evening on KPVM Pahrump Channel 25.1 from 7 p.m. You'll see never-before-viewed videos and photos taken by myself, all over the world.
Thank you for watching. UFO We Want to Know, and remember, yes, they are out there.
We're back. Thank you for staying with us. Let's go down with the first photo so we can start this account of what happened to George Washington. Now, in the accounts, Washington found solace in isolated prayer. As you can see from this painting here, shows George Washington kneeling and doing his own prayer alongside his horse. Next photo. So what happened in 1777, 78? They gave him undaunting courage to carry on with a very, very scary time. Not only his life, but the life of a young republic, democracy, whatever you want to call it. What gave him that courage? Next photo. In his vision, George Washington was shown what the United States was going to look like in the near future. Accounts say he saw visions of what America would look like in the unforeseen future. Next photo. As he went through his visions, the country started to grow. Cities starting to pop up. Little raindrops would hit like a map, and all of a sudden these cities would pop up. Next photo. And he would see that we would have cities from one ocean to the other. Now, back in 1777, you wouldn't think that would be possible. Look how big the United States would be compared to, look at Washington, D.C. to the right, the eastern seaboard. That was the United States. and this is what it would become. And of course, we have a lot more cities than that, but he was given a kind of vision of what it would look like. And I think that is so important to point out to people that he actually saw the United States grow before his very eyes. Next photo. Now, as George Washington, as I said, would pray, I asked the question, was it a alien encounter instead of an angelic encounter? We don't know because we weren't there, were we? Only George Washington would know for sure. Washington wrote, "This afternoon I was sitting at this table, engaging in preparations for a dispatch. Something seemed to disturb me. Looking up, I beheld standing opposite of me a beautiful female. So astonishing was I, for what had given strict orders. I had given strict orders not to be disturbed, that it was some moments before I found a language that I wasn't sure of. And before her presence, I heard several different phrases." Now, he never says he talked to her, but he heard. That's very important. "I felt a strange sensation spreading through me." That in itself reminds me of an abduction. Once more, as I listened to her address, I couldn't speak. My tongue had become useless, and I thought I became paralyzed. These are all little phrases that I've taken out of dispatches that he had written. And it's got to be said that a lot of people don't believe in a lot of this, but I tend to. A British historian named Burke claimed to have a daybook dictated by General Washington to his secretary. There are several pages referring to green-skinned Indians or greenskins. Handwriting experts verified the handwriting is that of Lieutenant Johnson, who did serve General Washington as his aide while in Valley Forge. So there's a lot of different documents that prove that what this gentleman was saying was true. Next photo. Since there was never any witnesses other than General Washington himself, these stories will remain a historic mystery. And again, as I always tell people, you have a brain, you can think the way you want to think, whether or not it's true or not. Now, in this photo here, you see General Washington or President George Washington at the White House. And Washington, it's a scene in the White House. He wasn't actually at the White House, but it's a scene there. And he became a third-degree Master Mason in 1753 in his hometown of Fredericksburg, Virginia. Next photo. Now, what are we looking at here? Well, we're looking at a painting that you can see at the Tundra in Washington, D.C. And the fact that if you're a person who reads the Bible, you'll note that they talk about Jacob's ladder. And in this photo here, in Jacob's ladder, the ladder went from the ground to the heavens. But in this painting here, we're talking about a ladder that's going up to a spacecraft, a UFO. And this is something you can actually go to Washington, D.C. and take your own pictures. Why this was painted? Who knows? But it is there for you to see. Next photo. As you can see, George Washington is standing right next to this. And this was a painting. You can see the paintings in Washington, D.C., and there's a lot of information out there that is contrary to what people say on on some of the diaries, some of the books people have written back in the 1800s even, and they don't agree with this, and yet they were painting this back then at the same time. So there's a little bit of confusion there. But unlike Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe, Benjamin Franklin, as I said earlier, Washington didn't keep any kind of memoirs. He wrote a diary, and that was so important for people to understand. A diary, to me, is more personal because in a lot of cases, diaries are kept for personal reasons that they don't want people to read. A memoir is for everybody to read, and there's the difference. He kept his diary from 1748 until December 13th, 1799, the day before his death. And the Library of Congress Manuscript Division houses 37. Now, this is very interesting. They house 37 of the 51. That means 14 pages are missing. 14 are missing. Why does the Smithsonian, why does the Library of Congress, why do all these governmental buildings hide certain things from the American public? We have a right to know that as taxpayers. We have a right to know that. And yet, they hide them from us. Next photo. Here's an interesting little tidbit about George Washington. If you look at what was said in his writings, a lot of things were looked at, and it was said that George Washington basically said or wrote what was on his mind. And here, this is the 1866 painting of that object above his left shoulder there, and I think it tells a very formidable story. Why would they paint a flying saucer above George Washington, and he's in his masonry regalia there? It's just an odd thing to see. Now, the Freemasons is not a religious group by any means, but they have their secrets, and they do it in ceremonies that nobody's included unless you are a Mason. Of course, it is something that's a close society. Next photo. And I don't want to get into religion here, but there is a biblical hearing here in Genesis 28, and it tells about this angel ascending and descending to the heavens, and by way of a ladder. But again, look at this. It's not going to the heavens. This is clearly a spacecraft. Now, some people tell me that they've actually seen this, and it's a lot more clear. I couldn't get a very clear picture of it. You can see this is kind of grainy, but I've had people tell me that it looks like a UFO up there. It looks like a metallic object, and some people have described it as a metallic object. But if you go there and you take pictures of it, if anybody can send me one, I really appreciate it, because I would like to see it. Someday I would like to go to Washington, D.C. and see all the things that are there. Now, whether or not you believe that George Washington had a UFO encounter or had a angelic encounter, I leave that up to you. I feel personally that it was probably, it could have been both, because a lot of people that I've talked to have had scary times in their lives where they felt that they had a guardian angel just appeared to them and bring them comfort. I've heard many, many stories. I even have a story of that of my own. But whether or not you believe one side of the story or the other, I leave that up to you. But there's just so much information out there about what actually happened to George Washington and his vision. He had a lot of people, a lot of officers that served with him, and even the servants that served with him said that he was a mysterious person, a very mysterious person. And that in itself is something to think about. But as far as I'm concerned, I believe George Washington did have an alien encounter. I really believe that. He could have had an angelic encounter also during his time, because when you're troubled, you find comfort. And I believe he found comfort in different ways. And whether or not you believe that, that's up to you, as I said before. But that's what my belief is. And I hope that for those of you who never heard of this, I hope you research it for yourself. We'll be back after this message.
Hi, I'm Joseph, the host and creator of UFO We Want to Know. Tune in every Saturday evening on KPVM Pahrump Channel 25.1 from 7 p.m. You'll see never-before-viewed videos and photos taken by myself, all over the world.
Thank you for watching. UFO, we want to know and remember, yes, they are out there.
Thanks for staying with us. Now, in the past, I've showed you a lot of videos of objects going through the sun's ray. And on this particular segment and the next segment, I'm going to be showing you two videos. And I think it's really important for you to see these UFOs, because what I caught just a few days ago was a fleet of UFOs going through the sun's aurora. Okay, figure this is the sun, and you've got all this brightness around it. You're going to see UFOs flying all around the place. This is an actual fleet. So let's show the video right here, and I'm going to read while you're seeing this video, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to be reading about what's going on. These are actual releases from the government. It's the Pentagon, NASA, SETI. It's a whole combination of people who have written things and have just released it. Now, a lot of people tell me, Joseph, don't bash the government too much here and there. But I have to read these dispatches, because the simple fact is they're saying this. And what you're looking at right now on television is a wave of UFOs flying all around. Now, if you can watch the video, and I'm going to be blabbing here. And I'm going to read just some of the certs here that I actually found while you're watching it. Okay, why is there a fighter aircraft sent to observe the balloon, despite it appearing to pose a national security threat to the United States? That in itself is a question people want to hear. Why are we sending up fighter jets to look at balloons when we know they're balloons? Okay. It is called a visual identification, VISID, when an unknown aerial vehicle is detected over and approaching the U.S. NORAD is tasked with identifying what the vehicle is and determines the threat. Okay, I'm going to keep reading a lot of these, because it's really so important for you to understand that a lot of these dispatches here don't make a lot of sense, because they're constantly talking about, well, there's no threat. There is nothing in our airspace that deems to a threat to the United States. And yet, I can go outside with a phone camera and I can videotape a fleet of UFOs going through our atmosphere. Okay? Let me say that again. They're going through our atmosphere. Now, scientists can look at these videos all they want, and they can say anything they want. Because like I said in the past segment, when you're in the military, you're a government official, and you're told to say something, you're going to go ahead and say what they tell you what to say. And that's just the way it is. And if you're going to, of course, live by the rules of your employer, you're going to have to do what they tell you they're going to do. Now on this one here, you're actually seeing I took one of the objects, and it was quite interesting. But this object here was a solid mass. They're going to try and tell me this was a balloon, because if it was a balloon, it was going in the Mach range. Next photo. As we get closer and closer to it, you're going to be able to see what this object actually looked like. It was a solid object. And on this particular video here, there was approximately 40 to maybe 45 UFOs flying through the atmosphere. And I tried to catch the most solid objects I could. Next photo. This was moving through our atmosphere. If this was in outer space, I wouldn't be able to capture it. I can guarantee you that, because my phone will not see that. You can see stars at night, of course, because it's black out there. It's very, very dark, and you can see the stars. But this is during daylight hours. This is taken at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Next photo. So what do you think you're seeing here? I asked that question because until we get some answers about these objects, whether or not they're, probes or UFOs, we're never going to know until we get some kind of information out of the Pentagon. Yeah, they don't want us to panic, but yet they won't give us any information. There's no clarity on it. Next photo. So I have to say that if the government feels they have to hide information from us for whatever reason, they're going to continue on doing that. Next photo. And this is the second UFO I caught in that video. I wanted to show you I look for the most solid object when I do it, because I think that if I show you, and as you can see my writing down there at 28 seconds, I caught this at its optimal amount of visual, so I can take some pictures of it, and that's exactly what I did here. I didn't mean to put 28 seconds down there, just my own notes, but anyway, this is what I had caught. Next photo. And why were the missions to take down that Chinese balloon have to and utilize the most expensive fighter jet, an F-22 Raptor, and then use the most expensive missile instead of a nose cannon? That was a question asked. Next photo. Next photo. We get closer. I want you to see what this object looked like from our perspective here. And then next photo. Okay. More certs here that I read. Now they used the F-22 because it was the best fighter to shoot down the Chinese balloon that was on the East Coast. And of course it was a spy balloon. We make no bones about it. The communist Chinese had the nerve to send over a humongous balloon with raptors on it, and we're trying to listen in on our bases and everything else that we had in the flight path of that particular balloon. Of course, the communist Chinese denied it, said it was an environmental balloon. Well, environmental balloon or not, we caught a lot of information off that balloon, and that information is now with our intel. The balloon was flying extremely high, and as you've seen, a lot of people have seen it on television. The U.S. said that it was able to jam the balloon signal, preventing transmission back to China, and also extract data collected by the balloon. In addition, the F-22 was better at tracking the balloon's descent after it was shot down. As to why a missile was used instead of guns, this is the important part of this little flyer here. You have to ask the Canadians. Okay, here's the problem with that. Canada is part of NORAD, and NORAD has the task of taking care of, next photo, taking care of not only the United States, but Canada, okay? The three objects that were shot down, one of them was over the Yukon. And this is the one that this particular message was written for. because they would have nothing to do with the one in Alaska or the one in Michigan or the one off the Carolina coast. So we know this is about the Yukon one. And why would we ask the Canadians? They gave us the okay to use the F-22 Raptor to take that object down. And on the next segment, I'm going to be talking about those 3 objects that were taken down. And I think you're going to find that real interesting because of what was said about those 3 objects. But getting back to the one in Yukon, no, I'm not going to ask the Canadians why we used an A-9 missile, a Sidewinder missile, to take down that balloon or that object or that UFO or whatever it is. It is the United States, that was our fighter aircraft that took it down. Our generals on this side tell the fighter pilot what to use. Why they would not use the cannon, again, I don't know. Now, on the one that was off the Carolina coast, the spy balloon, they used a missile to take that balloon down. I've said this before in a previous video. I think if they would have aimed their cannon high and then come down with a small burst, I think they could have deflated it and they could have had a better controlled crash landing of that balloon into the ocean. Instead, they used the missile to obliterate the balloon itself. And with the trestles that were on that balloon, I think they may have lost a lot of intel on how it was constructed. And I'm sure we have some very smart people, okay, and I'm sure that they reconstructed it. But I think they could have done a lot better job than what they did there. And I blame that on the military prowess of, oh, we can blow anything out of the sky. Okay, we know that. We have the best military in the world. We have the finest weaponry in the world. We know you can do that. You don't have to prove it to anybody. But get the intel. That's the most important part. This is the last photo, I believe, coming up. And for me to be able to capture all of these UFOs in a mass wave, it's extraordinary. We got one more photo, I believe. And ladies and gentlemen, these are objects. These are UFOs. They're in our atmosphere. How can I capture all these objects? And they keep releasing these statements that there's nothing there. Now, our scientists are going to have to come out sooner or later, and they're going to have to start saying things a little bit more clearer to us. Because if they expect taxpayers to idly sit by and watch us use expensive weapons to shoot down weather balloons or spy balloons, when we can we can have a cheaper way of doing it, I think that's so important. And I hate to keep bashing them, but they keep putting out these flyers, and so when as they keep putting them out, I'm going to keep answering to them. I need to know for myself why they would do that. Being in the military myself, I've seen a lot of wasteful spending, and it's ridiculous. But the taxpayers have a right to know that if there are objects in the sky, what's the risk to the everyday average American? We'll be back after this message.
Hi, I'm Joseph, the host and creator of UFO We Want to Know. Tune in every Saturday evening on KPVM Pahrump Channel 25.1 from 7 p.m. You'll see never-before-viewed videos and photos taken by myself, all over the world.
Thank you for watching. UFO We Want to Know, and remember, yes, they are out there.
Thanks for staying with us. And on this segment here, the last segment, I have another video to show you. And ladies and gentlemen, this video, like the previous one, is a mass wave of UFOs flying through our atmosphere. So let's show that video. This is the full screen of it. So for those of you who have high definition television, big screen, you're going to be able to see a lot of UFOs flying through here. They're just all over the place. I took 2 stop motions of the best UFOs in this video, and I'll be showing them. We're going to be looping this about 4 or 5 times. On February 10th, I'm reading more certs of what's come out from the Pentagon. February 10th, 2023, the United States Air Force shot down a high-altitude object. Remember that word, object, that had entered U.S. airspace over Alaska a day before. The object was shot down into the sea. The Department of Defense said it was the size of a small car and flying northeast at approximately 40,000 feet. Okay? 2023, Lake Huron, a high-altitude object, there's that word again, object, and this is dated February 12, 2023. They released it just last week again. Okay, I'm not going back to February 2023. This is just released last week. On February 11th, 2023, an octagon, remember that? Octagon, unidentified flying object, they're using the word UFO, was detected over modern Montana. It disappeared until it was spotted the next day in Wisconsin, flying at 20,000 feet. Now I'm taking these different pages, and because if it sounds like, hey, you're reading this, reading that, it's just what they put out. Whether it's to confuse us, who knows? Okay, what aircraft was shot down over Canada? That's the question we want to ask on this particular flyer here. A U.S. F-22 Raptor with the North American Airspace Defense Command, NORAD, which protects Canadian and American airspace, shot down the object, over Yukon, Canada. This is the Yukon in Canada. On Friday and Saturday, 2 smaller objects, again that word object, were downed over Alaska and Canada. A 4th was destroyed on Sunday over Michigan. Okay, now they're not using the word balloons; they're using the word objects, and in some cases they were using the word UFOs. Okay, so which is it? Here's a cert from a fighter pilot, and I think that this is one of the most interesting statements put out there. Why they would put it out there without knowing they're going to get backlash from people like me, I can't tell you. The statement starts off as saying, without any obvious system of propulsion or control, officials said, a 3rd mysterious object was knocked out of the sky on Saturday after it was tracked over Canada's central Yukon territory, about 100 miles from the U.S. border. Okay? So if it didn't have any obvious system, type of propulsion system or any way of controlling it, now in some cases you have the balloons can control somewhat by the nozzle on some of these balloons. On this one here, the pilot said that he could see no way of controlling this craft, whatever it was, up in the sky. And it was very, very confusing to him. The F-22 pilot who saw the object said, now here's the important part of this one here. The F-22 pilot who saw the object said it interfered with their sensors. Remember, in the nose cone of these jets, they have an enclosed system. It's protected, just in case they're shot at by ground fire. And but it showed that it had no propulsion system in it. So if it was a balloon, how is a balloon going to interfere with their software system, their sensors? Does that make sense to anybody? Next photo. And the next photo. Does it make sense to anybody out there, or is it just me? Am I going crazy trying to overthink this? Next photo. So I took a picture of this one here, primarily because it was a dark shadow UFO, but it was coming through. This was just entering the sun's rays. You can see to the left of it's giving off a little brightness there. Next photo. So I want to get into a little bit of what I think taxpayers would be really interested in hearing, and it's how much does it cost to fly a F-22 Raptor per hour? Okay, does anybody have any idea out there? Next photo. The F-22, though, is expensive to fly and maintain. It sets the Air Force back $68,000 per hour of flight. $68,000 per hour, okay? More than the F-15E Strike Eagle and the FC-16 Fighting Falcon. Maybe they didn't have those planes at this air base. Who knows? Next photo. I believe that's the last of these photos here. But I want to continue on with these search here. Next photo. There's the second one that I took, the solid object passing through the sun. This is going from right to left. The cheapest missile for dogfighting in the American inventory is the heat-seeking Sidewinder, costing $60,000 a piece. Now that's the basic model. Remember this, okay? I know that I said in earlier videos how much they cost, but there is a cheaper Sidewinder that costs $60,000. Now remember that $60,000 because that's very important. $60,000. So the question they asked, did they use the $60,000 missile? No. They used the special AIM-9X Sidewinder missile. That's the famed air-to-air weapon that comes with a hefty price tag of some $472,000 per unit. Let me say that again, $472,000 per unit. Now, back when these balloons, UFOs, objects were happening, they used a total of 5 of these $472,000 per unit missiles. That cost the taxpayers $2,360,000. Let me say that again, $2,360,000 taxpayers' money. When they could have used Gatling guns for probably $20,000, they could have shot down all 4 of those objects. But no, they had to spend $2,360,000. I like saying that because it is taxpayers' dollars they were using. Now, I don't blame the pilots. I blame the top dog here. I don't blame the pilots. The Joint Chiefs have to answer to that. They can sit there with all their medals hanging out on their chest, and they can stick their chest out all they want. But ladies and gentlemen, we're paying their salary, and for them to utilize a expensive missile to shoot down an object they could have used a Gatling gun with is beyond me. Next photo. As you can see, it looks like a donut as we get closer. Next photo. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor, the average U.S. income for the fourth quarter of 2023 was, get this, ladies and gentlemen, $59,384. How much did that cheapest Sidewinder missile cost? $60,000. So in other words, the cheapest missile we could have used was more than what a person would bring home annually. So a lot of this doesn't make sense. I think somebody needs to go to Congress and point out this information to the generals and to Congress. Now, I'm all for protecting our skies. Next photo. I'm all for protecting our skies. I'm all for being a great American and believing in democracy and believing in what we do. Believe me, I do. But when it comes to people who don't care about using a certain weapon because they can, is ridiculous. And I believe this is the last photo, or is there one more? It's the last photo. Okay, so this is be the last one here, and then I want to I want to point something out that I thought was really important. But take a look at this, ladies and gentlemen. This object here, it essentially seemed like it had a hole in it. And I think what happens is a lot of the UFOs I capture, they're spinning, sometimes clockwise, sometimes counterclockwise. And in a couple of weeks, I'm going to show you a UFO that flew right over my house. And I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I got a very, very clear view. Now, a lot of shows, you've seen people use photographs or videos of UFOs, and you can see they're metallic in shape, and they're making this kind of movements. Well, I caught one of those just yesterday. So I'll be showing that in an upcoming video, maybe 2 videos away from here. But I want to show you something here that's really important, and I hope you can see this. I didn't put it on the air, but here in the Carolinas, they show a weather balloon. Yeah, you can see it's a balloon. This is the one they shot down, the Chinese spy balloon. Then they show near Lake Huron a octagon shape. And then here they show a UFO. And then up here in the Yukon and Alaska, they're showing 2 alien heads. This is the same information, ladies and gentlemen, this is the same information that's coming out from the documents that I had read to you. So are they shooting themselves in the foot or what? I don't know. But I thought that was important to show you that they're mixing and matching. On this, that concludes the show, but I'll show you what's coming up here. Ladies and gentlemen, the first Sunday's Vendors event, it's a Second Amendment on Basin in Pahrump. I hope you're able to come out and spend some time with us out there. I'll be out there. I will be joining the Tumbler Lady, by the way. There'll be over 45 vendors, and you can buy Mother's Day's gifts there. This is tomorrow from 9 to 3 o'clock. Please come out and support your community. And for those of you in Las Vegas, please come out and spend a day out here in Pahrump. It's a great place to be. With that concludes the show, and I want to thank you for staying with us for this hour. And next week, we have a really exciting show for you where I have 2 more videos similar to these, but these are really going to grab your attention. So we'll see you next week.